Go ahead, Steve. You can go ahead, Steve.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Center for Career Services at GW, we are delighted that you could join us for our GW in Los Angeles Career Highlights, Getting the Scoop on Internships data. We're honored to be joined today by Bryson. Bryson is a global strategy marketing coordinator at the Walt Disney Studios. And let me go back and say that Bryson Rouzan Thomas is a 2015 graduate of GW in Bachelor's in Organizational Sciences. He is most recently at Walt Disney Studios. He executes global theatrical marketing campaigns for brands that include Marvel Studios, Lucasfilms, Disney Live Action, and 20th Century Studios. He's also had the opportunity to assist in the marketing execution for the $1 billion campaign franchises such as Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, Captain Marvel, Avengers, Endgame, and the Black Panther, just to name a few. He's also a member of Represent, which is a Walt Disney Studio marketing center of excellence dedicated to enhancing multicultural marketing campaign strategy and efforts, and they're nominated by the executive leadership. He also serves as the events and partnership chair for the Bond, which is Walt Disney Studios' leading Black employee resource group, where he serves as a company-wide Business Employee Research Group Programming Chair. And under his leadership and the strategic vision themed as Wakanda United, where Black excellence resides, Bryson is held responsible for channeling 100,000 plus corporate sponsorship towards 40 plus different corporate wide virtual programming experiences and custom creative content, garnering global reach for the company's associates. We are also joined today by Marissa Moran, and Marissa is, I'm sorry, excuse me for a minute, Marissa Moran Gantman. So I know her as Marissa Moran, but she is now Marissa Moran Gantman. She's the Chief Communications Officer at the Pacific Council on International Affairs. She's in charge of brand management. She handles media inquiries, directs communications with members and the community, and oversees content curation for the PAC Council magazine. Prior to that, she has an array of projects that bridge strategic communications, media, and global impact, including the launch of the Scoff Center for Social Impact Entertainment at UCLA. She's also worked in communications and PR agencies in in Los Angeles and London, where she specialized in media freedom and journalism safety in conflict zones. She is a graduate of summa cum laude from political communications and international affairs from GW. And she also holds an MSc with a distinction in media communications and development from the London School of Economics. She's also an AmeriCorps engineer. Not an engineer, an AmeriCorps alumna. So we are honored to have both of them here today. A couple of ground rules when we start. all students are being muted. If you have questions, please feel free to put them into the chat feature, or the Q&A, and we will address them at the end when we get done with our questions that we have for our panelists. So right now, I'm going to start with some questions. So Marissa and Bryson, if you could share with our students how GW, career services, faculty, or any campus activities played a role in your career development. I'll start with you, Marissa.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. Thank you to Steve and Rachel and all the organizers. And Bryson, it's really an honor to share this panel with you. I hope everybody's doing okay. Calling in from Los Angeles today. Let's see. So for the first question about this resources that are on campus, I do recall going to the Career Center and using the resume writing service, and also just sort of chatting with some of the people there to get an idea of the things that I love to do. I will say that I think one of the most defining things that helped me figure out the career that I've ended up leading in my GW experience was studying abroad. And that was because in my study abroad experience, I did a program with the School for International Training, and I went to Switzerland, to Geneva. And while in Geneva, the program included a lot of visits to the United Nations and learning about different, social justice, I would say, like institutions around the world. And I really started to, I just sort of fell in love with the space, and it became a passion to learn more about this intersection of media and journalism and international conflict. And that was just a really formative experience for me. I also ended up doing so that was my junior year. And then my senior year, I wrote a senior honors thesis on a topic that I had started exploring in my study abroad experience. And that also really set me up, because as part of that research process for the honors thesis, I interviewed somebody who, when I then went to London for grad school, got in touch, and he ended up hiring me as an intern at his company. So I really sort of kept following these threads that were really sort of like ignited something in me, right? I would start doing something and I just felt like, yes, I love this. I want to keep following this. And there was always a path that I could keep following. And I, was always sort of forging and looking for that path as well. So those were a few of the things that, I know students on this call are probably going through a really hard time with the pandemic and everything going on, and that study abroad is probably not an option to you. And I just want to say that I'm so sorry that you're going through this, but I hope that you're still able to make the most of the opportunities that GW is providing, and just sort of taking this time to really think about what you do love and where your passions lie and how you can move forward with those.
Absolutely. And good morning. Good morning. Just thank you so much, Marissa. I share the same honor to be, in the same room and on the same panel with you, and Steve, and to the entire Alumni Association. Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored and privileged to, really speak to, students, which is something I really do truly love, because I firmly believe that, while yes, my passion is marketing, I feel like I'm not doing the job unless I'm, bringing people up underneath me. So to the students in the room, I share the same sentiments that Marissa, shared about, this difficult time. I know it's superbly challenging right now for you mentally, and, just, going through this entire experience. I could not imagine. I truly can't. I've never been through what you're going through right now. So I just wanted to put that out there to start. And again, as I mentioned, 100% GW, overall plays a large role in my professional development, my personal development, career development, so many aspects. We can absolutely talk about my journey to GW is actually quite hilarious. But I think, one of the real big things about my GW experience, when I look back and I kind of think about what, values I kind of still carry on, I was really involved in our extracurricular activities, beyond just the day-to-day, student life. I was president of Black Student Union for 2 consecutive years, my sophomore and junior year. I was on program board. I served as the chair for diversity and inclusion in my junior year. I served as Black Heritage Celebration chair, one of those years as well. So in marketing, especially, you have to be the best communicator. You have to be the best negotiator. And all those things are definitely muscles that I definitely picked up from being involved in those activities. The event planning, the budget management, all those things are absolutely, content. All of those things absolutely play a role in my career today, 100%. And even some of the things that I've done today have actually been inspired from a lot of the things that I did in my extracurricular as a student at GW, 100%. So that part, is definitely something that I value. I think the other part, I applaud GW for doing a better job of recently getting connected more into media and entertainment. I think when I was there, it wasn't as, top line. I think students had absolutely, when I was there, been pushing and pushing and pushing for our alumni to have more entertainment opportunities. Obviously, being in DC, it's, a little slim to none. So I've had to really fight for internship experience outside of GW. I did the Recording Academy DC chapter while I was there as an intern. I did a modeling agency that was based out of Georgetown. It was like the artist agency, and was just doing day-to-day with that. So, I did ICM Partners, which is a very big wig talent agency. I was in concerts for 2 consecutive summers as an intern. So all those things I did find, outside of my GW networking experience. But, I will say I do applaud them for having more, paying more attention to bringing media and entertainment opportunities to you guys today.
Great. Thank you for that. Bryson and Melissa, you had mentioned that, what your experience was at GW, but could you elaborate a little bit on how your studies and also your internships and what you did while you were on campus prepared you for what you're now doing in your current roles?
Yeah, Marissa, you want to take this one?
Sure. And, I have to laugh what you're saying about not finding great media and entertainment opportunities while in DC, because then when, obviously, like I was in international affairs, political communications, obviously that's the hub in DC. And then when I relocated to Los Angeles, I was like, what am I going to do here? I really had to look for that, again, that intersection that I fell in love with and that I had up to that point really specialized my career in. So it's funny that I just think it's a good example to show that sometimes you need to dig for what you want, and yet you find it, you will find it if you look hard enough and you kind of connect with the right people. So I'm glad to hear that you were able to find those experiences ultimately, and really it helped to propel your career forward, Bryson. Um, let's see, in terms of other experiences I had on campus, I mentioned study abroad, which of course wasn't on campus, but it was still an opportunity that GW gave me. So I was in the School of Media and Public Affairs, and I just remember taking time to get to know my professors. And one in particular, I remember my senior year, I was super stressed out, had the honors thesis going on, had a bunch of other classes that I was trying to take. I might have been taking a graduate class, just being a typical overachieving GW student. And I think I went in to talk to a professor about grad programs because I thought I would go right away to grad school. And I remember, saying, I'm going to try this. And what about this one? And what about this program? And tell me more about this. And, he could tell I was a little frazzled. And he said, I think you need a break. And honestly, it was really good advice because it encouraged me to take a second and think about what I really wanted to do. And after a crazy 4 years at GW and just working super hard, it definitely felt like I needed a year off, which is, in terms of not going directly into a master's program or not trying to get like a super high stress job. And so that's when I chose to do my AmeriCorps year. And that was a really formative year for me too, just in terms of understanding the education system, understanding, economic inequity and all the like struggles that in particular the families I was working with were mostly migrant families and in Colorado. And it was just a really formative experience for me and looking to move forward in my career and doing social impact work and really wanting to apply my skills in writing and communications to that field. So I would say that, building those relationships with professors was positive. And honestly, don't take it for granted. If you've gotten to know, like if your professors have office hours and they make themselves available, take advantage of it and get to know them and, share your fears, share your interests, let them know what you're thinking about because I even just remember hearing some wonderful stories from my professors also about their own careers, and being really inspired by that. So, I, continue to try to connect with your professors, even if we're in this remote environment, because it can, they can just say one thing that can spark something in you. And that can be really, really helpful as you move forward and figure out what your next steps are.
Yeah, I totally want to echo that on office hours because like I was in office hours like nobody's business. And I will say 100%, I never really tested well all my life. Like I just had, struggles with testing well. And I would always perform, better obviously as a student in class, in projects and papers, all that. But when it came to tests, it just literally was not me from SAT to school in general. And so office hours though, actually, when you show how passionate you are and also like how you want to dig deeper, it does help the outcome of your results in your performance in the class 100%. I think, one of the biggest things relating back to Steve's question about, just how the experiences in the past kind of, contribute to today. I landed upon organizational sciences. It was not my original major. I started off as a business major. I transferred over to school or attempted to transfer over to School of Media and Public Affairs. Um, I wasn't the biggest fan of journalism. And then organizational sciences was just presented to me. And I fell in love like immediately. And I think I landed upon it around like my junior year. It was the perfect hybrid of like business marketing for me tied to leadership, understanding culture, understanding how your external brand and your internal brand are one and the same, and 100% I've still used that skill set and those studies in my marketing field today 1,000%. So I definitely if you have not come across organizational development or sciences, I absolutely encourage you to study it, because there's so much relevant coursework in the major, from psychology to negotiations to intercultural communication. All those things are absolutely things that, and skill sets you should absolutely have as a leader and a marketer if that's a field that you're interested in moving forward. I think again, internships 1,000% were superbly important. I mentioned I interned at ICM for 2 consecutive summers. I was working with talent at the time like Janae Aiko and all Top Dog, like Kendrick Lamar, and people who, when you look back at it, then they were getting like, they weren't even known artists. They were like getting offers for like $35,000. And now, Kendrick is the highest paid touring rapper of all time. Janae Aiko, largely successful. So just to, be a part of that growth experience and to look back at their trajectory is, so awesome and so cool. And again, I stress internships, internships, internships. I think the variety and the diversity of your internship experience is very important and critical as you move in, to the professional world after graduation. Also, I'm getting questions in the Q&A. Should I respond to them?
No, we'll take care of those at the end.
Okay.
So don't worry about those. This is hard enough as it is. So following up on what you had just mentioned, Bryson, and you have the advantage here because you are a native Angelino. So for students who are interested in moving to Los Angeles, what tips would you have for them to secure employment in Los Angeles? Whether they are in LA currently or whether they're looking at it from a remote location?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll tell you, like, I'm very transparent and I'm very realistic. I stress, after graduation for all students to consider getting agency experience, because at an agency, one as an assistant, it is so high volume and it is the training wheels to get into entertainment. It's honestly what we call, paying your dues. But also at the same time, agency, and I will say the landscape moving forward is going to be different with internships. I think it's going to be highly competitive, given the spectrum of COVID still being in play, and how companies are going to be prioritizing budget wise, how headcount, literally how many interns and programs can they actually have. because we still have not really seen the economic results of COVID yet. And I think a lot of companies, especially in media entertainment, are going to struggle. It's definitely, survival of the fittest 1,000%. So I want to start with that. The landscape, I imagine, moving forward is going to be very, very competitive just from that standpoint. I think on top of that, as an assistant coming out of college, I was making like 11.25 an hour, maybe, working 12 hours a day. And then sometimes having to go work concerts at night during the week, constantly on the go. And so it is an absolute hustle. And again, those years are the training wheels. It doesn't get easier, but that is just the start. But I think it's different for people who move here because financially, I want to set people up for success, and it's hard. Like LA is a very expensive city. Same thing for New York. So you have to be prepared for those things. But I think beyond those things, absolutely networking, maintaining relationships, from your internships, and really building your brand. I think the last bullet point is that a lot of people, as you come out of college, are going to ask you to be specific. They're going to be like, when you're networking, having these interviews, what exactly do you want to do? And I'm going to tell you, you don't have to actually know, but sometimes recruiters, when you're trying to get hired, 1,000%, they want you to be very specific. So just know that. But yeah, I think all those things definitely play a role as we move forward.
I definitely agree with networking for sure. I relocated to Los Angeles 7 years ago now from London after doing my master's program and having a job there. I'll be honest, I relocated for my personal reason. I met someone and fortunately it worked out and we got married, hence the new last name. I'm one of
So yeah,
those.
it actually worked out then, 100%.
It worked out. And I'm one of those people who have my wedding in 2020. It looked very different, but we did end up getting married, so that's good. But yeah, so I relocated to Los Angeles for non-career reasons and really had to kind of rebuild my career here. And I started just reaching out to everybody that I knew. And honestly, the GW Alumni Network was extremely valuable. You never know they're going to introduce you to somebody who's going to introduce you to somebody else who's suddenly going to be like, oh, I know this person who needs to hire somebody. And I will say that at the entry level, like coming out of undergrad at the entry level position, it's going to be a little bit easier because you're looking for jobs that end in coordinator or assistant or things where somebody's willing to take a chance. And I think you should definitely use LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn has grown as a resource. Again, look at people in the GW network and just reach out for informational interviews. Just say, I would love, I'm a GW student graduating and I'm interested in working in Los Angeles and would love to hear a little bit more about your experience and tell you what I'm interested in. Because again, you just never know. Hopefully they'll introduce you to other people and it'll just create this chain effect. And at the very least, it's an investment for you. It's an investment into your future. And even if you don't see those things paying off at first, they will eventually. And so, check in with those people every once in a while and just sort of keep maintaining that relationship. And people have some people have a little more time on their hands. Some people have less time on their hands right now. So, respect people's time, ask for a 20-minute phone call. And I think that you can really see that go a long way.
Can I just add to that? Like, it is an absolute delicate art, networking, 1,000%. It's not easy. You have to find the balance in networking, in presenting yourself. Again, when I talk about building your brand, in the 20 minutes that you might get that Marissa just talked about, you better be ready with an elevator pitch. You better have your points, ready to go and like get your point across. At the same time, though, you don't want to come off as uh, aggressive is not the right word or advantageous, but you don't want to come out the gate and say, I want the job. What do I have to do? Right. That's part of that delicate art is like, how do you there's a question in the queue about how do you leave that lasting impression? You really just have to, when you're in the room, like find that balance of, being confident, but also coming from a humble place. But on top of like, I'm the candidate that you need. Please feel free to keep me in mind, if future opportunities come 100%. But I always say, lastly, always, always, always take the meeting. You do not know who that person knows, even if the role that you're going up for, even if you feel like they're at a company that you're like, how could I ever, why would I ever work there? Take the meeting. I'm telling you, it absolutely is an investment because when you get hired, you are actually considered an investment. I mean, you don't know who people know. Like, this industry is so small, but also people know so many other people. So 1,000% always take the meeting.
That is great advice, and something we tell the students all the time. It's also very good practice. So sometimes practicing with a company that you may not be stressed about working for helps you when you go to the company that you really want to work for. So that was both great advice because that covered the networking question that I was going to ask both of you. So let's go to how, before you get to the networking part, on the resume or a cover letter, what tips do you have for that? Because a lot of it is, getting in through that first gate, and a lot of that is in a written form. So, do you have any advice or tips on what the resume or the cover letter should look like, or?
Bryson, do you have any insight here? I have some thoughts. I don't know how valuable it'll be.
I mean, listen, I could go on for days about, resumes. Obviously, like, you guys can find me on LinkedIn. I look at resumes all the time. I'm happy to. I will say, it definitely depends on your field. Like, I've actually even had one of my most recent resumes reviewed by the GW Career Services Center. And like, the individual who I talked to said, like, based on the resume I gave, for entertainment, it's fine. But for, something that's more business oriented or more, like sales-ish, it might not work. And so that you kind of have, like, with your design, how you present yourself, 1,000%, it's kind of up to you. Or if you feel like you can, your resume should absolutely be catered to the company, 1,000%. I will also say, I'm not going to name the company, but I recently had like an informal meeting, and they literally said, if you ever want the opportunity that we have, and I would never advise you to do this, but look at the job description and, like, literally implement elements of the job description into your resume. They basically told me to literally, like, if I ever got there, to plagiarize, which was like mind-boggling to me, and I'm not going to tell you to do that. But still, you should look at the job descriptions before you send your resume, to cater it to, the job you potentially are up for. I think 1,000%, though, the reality with resumes, these recruiters are looking at them like maybe for a minute max, if you even get that. You also have to consider, when you are submitting your resume or even an application, for example, to Disney, we get probably like 1,000 to 2,000 applicants per role, obviously, because we're a large company. And so, yes, it's very metrics based. When you submit your resume, it's very qualitative, the results. And so I always say in your resume, make sure it's like situation, action, result, X equals Y. I did this, and how did I perform it? Or did I do it well? They want to know, what did you do, and did you do it well? That's what should really come across. And I honestly say, the more simple, the better. Like, I see a lot of people who have like just unnecessary over the top designs, and I'm like, no, just keep it direct, straight to the point, and very straightforward.
Absolutely. And for cover letters, I'm a writer and I hate cover letters.
I
I mean,
hate, I hate them. I literally hate them.
unbelievable that companies are still asking for them, but people really do read them. And I think similar to what you were saying about the resume, Bryson, in terms of needing to align it with the job description, you can certainly do that in your cover letter as well, right? Something that I've done in cover letters before is, you're looking for A, B, C, and this is how this is how I excel in A, B, and C, and then giving clear examples. Again, cover letter and also resume, where you guys are, resume should be one page. Do your best to keep it at one page, and cover letter absolutely one page or shorter. And just really trying to make clear why you want that organization and that company, that organization, and that position, why you are the right person for those specific things. Yes, I wish I could say you could create the perfect template and then, just switch out a few lines here and there. Don't risk it. Just rewrite a new cover letter for every single one. You can use, again, some formatting things or some aspects of previous ones, but you got to write a new cover letter each time. So just do it.
Yeah, that's great advice from both of you. Switching up just a little bit, because DC is such a small city and everyone knows LA is a vast metropolitan area. What tips would you give for students who are relocating to the LA area? How is it different than DC? Are there special places that they should look to live, or, what advice would you give for someone who's moving there right off?
Live close to where you work. You can't, don't have a commute. Like I haven't commuted for the last year. I live on the west side of LA and my job was downtown. So I would take public transportation every day. I would take my bike to public transportation and then take the metro downtown. And that's exhausting. It really depends on what kind of field you're looking in. So since I work in nonprofit, and I found that a lot of the nonprofits I was looking at when I first got to LA were either based downtown or on the west side in the Santa Monica area. So those tended to be the places that I was looking. Just I would say like pay attention, try to get an idea, Google the company and their headquarters and get an idea of where they are. Again, I don't think anybody in Los Angeles is doing in-person interviews right now, so you don't have to worry about that too urgently. It is, I've lived on the west side my whole time here, so I've it's become my home over here. But there's every neighborhood in LA has its own unique characteristic, and it's just wonderful in its own way. So explore what fits for you, and even if it's a little far from your job, and if you ultimately have to commute, it might be worth it if you found a place that you love and that you can afford to live there and commute. Public transportation is increasing in LA, so that's good.
I will tell you, if you have any idea of LA, I've been commuting, which actually is the silver lining in this entire pandemic that we're in, because I've not had to travel 3 freeways from the 405 to the 101 to the 134 and back every day. It's tragic. I don't know how I've done it for the past 4 years, and now I'm looking back like this is not that bad. But there's a question that like asks like, do you need to know how to drive and stuff like that? Like I think to her point, 100%, if you don't live close to work, and you're going to have to commute, you're either going to be Ubering, or you're going to have a car situation. 1,000%. I think, again, going back to my point about just price wise, like apartments, if you were looking for a 1 bedroom, you're probably paying like 1,500 plus at a minimum. So just be prepared for that. I think from a financial standpoint, it's just very important to know as you head into it. If you're looking for anything under that, you're probably gonna have a roommate. So just know that, which is fine. Like everybody does roommate situations. Like that's completely normal. But yeah, a car. We're not as our public transportation is increasing, but it's not as prevalent yet. So just putting that out there.
Go to some of the questions that I see now. So give me a second. One of the questions we have from the students is, what would you say to a student who struggles to self-motivate with respect to the career search? She's always gotten good grades, but have a hard time getting started when it comes to internships and job hunting.
Something that comes to mind is to really ask yourself, what do you love? Well, what does motivate you? What gets you out of bed every day? What do you love about your studies? What sort of things have really, just made you want to dive deeper? And maybe that's something that's not, traditional business related. Maybe it's a sport or something else that, an extracurricular. And where could your career go from there? I think it's really starting with what's your passion. And, if you like connecting with people, then maybe just, again, these informal or informational interviews with people you connect with on LinkedIn or through the GW Alumni Network are a way to just start learning about what other people do. And it makes it it makes it a more social activity to internship and job hunt.
Yeah, totally. I think she hit it, nail right there, is that, you have to be passionate. Passion honestly drives everything. And you kind of have to ask yourself that, like, what is the end goal here? Or where do you have to really ask yourself, like, I always tell people the keyword of positioning oneself, right? How do you want to position yourself for the next step and the next step and the next step? And sometimes that requires just, chopping it up with somebody, with your mentor. Obviously, if you ever want to chop it up, I would love to just dig deeper with you and kind of figure out like, how you can like create that. But honestly, like, I know the question is like, I'm having a hard time getting started. Like, start like today, start yesterday. You can absolutely start doing that research. I like, as cheesy and corny as it sounds, I've absolutely, created like 5-year plans for myself, 1-year plans for myself, end goals, long-term goals, things like that, that really help me craft, where I see myself. And honestly, for Disney, for example, never I thought of how I could get there, but never in this world that I think I would actually end up with my first role in Disney marketing under studio at theatrical and one of the #1 studios in the world. It mind boggles me. And so I tell you that to say like, I plan to set myself up for that, and look where I am now. I'm entering my 5th year with the company. So that is because of passion, 1,000%. And so you have to sit with yourself and really dig deep, and figure that out.
Great. That's great advice. So, with respect to networking, how does a student make an impression, a lasting impression while networking? Do you have any advice for them on that?
I know we touched on this a little bit before, but I think, Bryson really, hit the nail on the head with saying that you want to, again, making your passion clear and making it clear what you're interested in, and trying to not be, yeah, I like what he said about not being overly aggressive about a job, and instead sort of being, be grateful for their time for sure. And one tip is actually maybe to follow up, if assuming this is like right now a Zoom call or a phone call or something, follow up with an email and do attach your resume just so that they have that handy, as a practical step there.
I'm going to answer 2 questions in one because I feel like the questions that just came through, it says, how do you stand out in the initial recruitment process? Okay, I'm going to give you 3 tips. One, I think. Step 1 is before your meeting, do your research. Most people at this point have a LinkedIn. You can Google News them, and like, I'm giving you gems that I don't even tell anybody. So you guys better appreciate this, seriously. But like, anytime I have an informal meeting or even, an actual interview, I always look up the person first and grab like 2 to 3 bullet points that I can walk into the conversation with, ready to, like just bring up. That leaves such a lasting impression. And I'm telling you now, that is one of the things that has gotten me whenever I've interviewed to the last round, whether I got the job, every single time. Because a lot of people don't do it. A lot of people do not take the time to actually prepare for those conversations, informal or not. So, if you're just meeting someone, always do the research, part 1. Part 2, absolutely. Once you meet with them, respond with them, to an email, like saying, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I love this part of the conversation. I've attached my resume, for future reference if there's ever an opportunity. Looking forward to our next touch base. Part 3, you follow up in writing with a thank you card. No one does it. It is like old fashioned. It is outdated. But I'm telling you, that is also one of the best ways you can leave a lasting impression, is if you take the time to literally write a thank you card, stamp it, and put it in the mail. Like, that is, it's chef's kiss. And the handwriting better be on point. Like, I know we're not used to that, but as the handwriting better be good and clear. But those are definitely my best 3 tips, 100%.
That's great advice.
I
Absolutely
see
great
that
advice.
Juliana followed up with a question saying they don't think it's weird that you're LinkedIn stalking. I mean, don't like, I don't, I think that they would appreciate that you did the research and that you put that time in. It shows that you care about their time and you want to make the most of it. And it doesn't, you don't have to list off their entire background, right? You find, like Bryson said, you find those points to connect on. Maybe they posted something about their dog and be like, oh, I saw you have, German Shepherd. So do I, something like that.
Like, literally, all you can, first off, if they, because I know that question is rude through, a lot of people can see like who's viewing their page. I want you to know that I was looking at your page, because I want you to know that I'm doing my research. I think the other thing again is like, sometimes I will literally, yeah, so I'll pick up their degree. That's all the basic stuff. But like, just like she said, like, pick up the unique things that, they're not expecting you to bring up. Like, oh, I saw, there was one person I met with, who had like, she had done a 3-day Google like program that was highly competitive. She had to be, go through like rounds just to be part of that 3 day. And I brought that up to her in the conversation. And she's like, how did you like, how did you even pick that up? And because that was like the most minimal part of, her LinkedIn, but she's like, still, they're like, that's dope. So absolutely, doing the research, letting them know you're doing the research is absolutely not stalking. It's what you should be doing, I think.
That's great. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions that are geared towards you individually. Bryson, could you talk more about your ICM internship?
Oh my gosh, what a question. Yeah, I literally since high school, I was like just, I always knew I wanted to be in entertainment. I didn't know exactly what lane I wanted to pursue. Obviously, like Entourage was a thing when I was in high school. And so, that like the agency route 100% stood out. And also, I had already heard, like agency experience is definitely key, as I was like learning more about that industry. And so I knew someone who's like a friend of a friend who's like an agent at ICM who I had been begging for internship experience since high school. But at the time, we internships were basically unpaid, meaning in California, it was illegal for high school interns to actually, perform work, quote unquote. And so I had to wait until I graduated, which I did. And I already was just like banging on their door, ready to go. And I think that hunger and angst and eagerness to get in absolutely led to me getting into ICM. Funny enough, when I started my internship, I started a week before a lot of the main interns had started, which led to me getting the one seat that was open in the one department that I specifically wanted, which was urban music touring. Um, and that led to me getting brought back the next summer. I was doing, not gonna lie, a lot of the things that I should not have been doing as an intern, working over hours, going to concerts at night. I don't even think I was supposed to be working phones. Like, but the agent that I was working for, who's still one of my main mentors to date, was just, she had just been promoted to agent. And so I was like just willing and ready. And I just was like, I'm like, how am I working with all these, amazing artists right now? Like, doing touring and like booking, with this agent was crazy. And then that led to me getting hired full time. And so I think the experience, I want to put it out there 100%. Agency is not easy. It is not for everybody. And so I would never, push you into an area where you don't think that you will thrive or be able to handle. I knew going in, what agency culture is like. It is long hours, especially as an assistant. I will say the department varies 100%. Urban concerts, touring, always working. Also at the time, like we were not allowed to have phones outside the building or email access outside the building. So I was strapped to my desk Monday through Friday at a computer. There would be times I stepped out the building on Friday and I was like, I've not seen sunlight in literally days. So like it is hard work, but the grind, like, and then even going to the concerts, like just being part of that experience, I think really made up all for it. Like I got Coachella VIP passes for free, like every year, like that absolutely was worth it. And so I think, just the grit and it absolutely, again, prepares you. When you have agency experience on your resume, it absolutely opens doors 1,000%.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Someone said RIP concerts. That is hilarious.
So, Marissa, I lost the question. We'll go with this one. Bryson, while I find Marissa's question. Bryson, what skills in organizational science helped you secure work in the marketing industry?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it, short and quick, but, top line 100%, just understanding leadership, being a leader, knowing how to communicate as a leader. Again, like the intercultural communications class I took, 1,000%, like, especially, in today's kind of conversations about, bringing diversity and inclusion to the forefront, allowing multicultural to just exist and be a part of our strategy, knowing how to communicate with other cultures and races, especially within the professional world, is key and clutch in any field that you go into. Again, the negotiations, the communications, the psychology classes. If you have any experience in psychology and understanding like just behaviors and patterns, oh my God, like it's just like 1,000% all those things. And just even the studying of corporations, large and small, and how they fail. was definitely, critical to my understanding of like how large companies work and small as well, and like how to be successful in those areas.
Great. Marissa, when in your
Yeah.
GW experience did you realize that you wanted to look into the intersection between your major and your career interest?
Yeah, I think it was well, I started out at GW. I think I started out as like an English major again, just knowing that I loved to write and I liked literature, and so that's kind of all I knew. And then when I got to GW, it just opened up a whole new world for me in terms of the international affairs side of things and learning about and then I actually took a dean's seminar. I'm not sure if those are still available, but I did a dean's seminar on Hollywood and politics, and that's what really hooked me into the School of Media and Public Affairs and the political communication major in particular. And I realized it was one of the only ones in the country. And I'm always attracted to scarcity, I guess. So I was like, well, I have to do this one. But I ended up loving it. It was such a great, I mean, it was just the best, such an incredible program with such fascinating uh, classes and topics that we dove into, and it's so important right now for everything that's going on in the country. And I think that again, my study abroad experience was really important in helping me kind of define, see examples of work in the world that was like, oh my gosh, I love that. That's people trying to improve journalism systems in other places or protect journalists that are working in conflict areas. That was like, oh, I love this. This combines everything that I love. Um, Really looking for, again, real world examples of things that kind of brought together all of those passions that I had. But again, the dean's seminar, I don't, that was only something available to freshmen, I think, in my when I was there. And I'm not sure if GW still does them, but that was a nice opportunity to kind of dabble in like a unique topic area.
Great, thank you. So we're getting ready to wrap up, but I do want to give you each an opportunity to just any closing tips or remarks that you have. I know we addressed a lot of these throughout. One question that we can just throw out there that I know has been answered numerous times, but just as a last reminder to the students that are on the call, ways to stand out in the initial recruitment process when you don't have an in or someone to vouch for you at that company. So if you could kind of sum up, our conversation and kind of keep that in mind, that would be great.
Yeah, I think for me it would be, when I understand the question, because in media and entertainment it's hard getting in the door. And it's definitely easy to navigate your career once you land the job and you finally get in the door. And media and entertainment is challenging getting in because a lot of it is very referral based and very trust based. So that I fully understand. And again, just like I told you, like I got into the industry, from a friend of a friend of a friend. So it definitely takes eagerness and passion and hunger for it. I think really what comes across all the time is being honest, being transparent, and being authentic, and just bringing yourself to the table. You should not go in being someone that you're not, because a recruiter or anybody that you talk to will absolutely be able to depict that in the conversation. Just being yourself. And I know it sounds cheesy, but I've gotten to where I am today specifically because of how honest I am and just always bringing myself to the table. And I think I do tend to be the voice of the table. That I don't like to be the devil's advocate, but I do like to ensure that every perspective, and voice is heard, so that we can make the best decisions possible. And so speaking up, being honest, being transparent, and being authentic, all those things absolutely play a role in how to present yourself as the best candidate possible.
Definitely echoing the authenticity recommendation. Also, coming back to the marketing question too, or yeah, the question about being successful in marketing. I mean, show your creativity, like come up with new ideas and pitch them. Again, whether that's you have an internship and it doesn't have to be about some, huge new campaign that someone needs to launch. It could be hey, I noticed that there's a gap in communication in this area of the organization. Here's how I think that can be fixed, right? Bring your solutions to the table. And in the recruitment and interview process, do the same. See, look at a company, of course, look at a company's website and do the research as we've talked about. Think about like, oh, maybe it's not entirely clear who their audience is in this message that they're sending out. So maybe I should just mention like something that this is a way that I might contribute to improving, this thing, or this is something that I noticed you guys might be able to work on, not in a way that's going to make them feel like they're not, it's a balance. It's you got to be careful, you got to be a strategic communicator. But finding ways to point out like little things that you could add to in their organization. They call them pain points, right? And again, just coming back to your passion, make your passion known, and just make it clear why it's very relevant, that specific job, that specific company, and why. Make it a little bit more about them sometimes than about you. They want to hear them. They want to hear themselves and what they're hearing you say.
Yeah.
So we have one more question and then we'll wrap up. Do you think it's advantageous for students to move to that city and then search for a job, or do you think they should look at it from a remote? Do you see advantage or disadvantage to being in the city that you're looking for a position?
The challenge for entertainment is that, especially in comparison to like, people who are in the business school who are getting jobs like JP Morgan, a lot of the, financial institutions, for example, entertainment, when you're applying for a job, you have to be ready, like within 2 to 3 weeks. Like if they're actually considering you, the reality is that they want you present. I think it's different, obviously, because we're in this very virtual landscape. So everything's, done on computers, but there is going to be a point in time, when we are going to have to venture back to at least, showing up in the office space, physically. So it's hard to just have a job lined up ready after graduation. Like I couldn't really start looking until like April, May of that year, because I just was not in a position to literally walk onto a desk. That's what they're looking for. So you kind of take that risk. I personally think, try and just prepare as much as possible before you actually make the official move. I don't think any, job is going to put you in a situation where you move and then you don't have opportunity lined up and then you're struggling to make money. Obviously, I think, position yourself and then make the move.
I agree with that advice. And I know, people ask like, should I put a Los Angeles address on my resume? If you know someone who's willing to let you use their address, I would say go ahead and do that. I do think that can make a difference if the only thing you're going off of is your paper. If they're like, oh, this person's already here, whereas they might hesitate a little bit if somebody's elsewhere. But again, right now it's not as important, and a lot of jobs are being listed as permanently remote. So that's a nice flexibility that you have too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, great. Well, thank you for all the advice and the career advice that you have given our students. This is part of having GW alums, as we addressed earlier. And I know there was a question earlier about how to connect with GW alums, and I believe Rachel's going to drop it into the chat right now. But there is GW Career Connect, and we'll drop the link into the chat. Currently, there's 138 alumni that have volunteered to be mentoring with students, talking to them in California itself. So please use GW Career Connect. Build yourself a profile, and you can connect and search through and find alumni to discuss career opportunities with you. But Bryson and Marissa, we want to thank you so much for everything you did. It's alums like you that make GW great. So thank you so much for today. This will be recorded. We will send it out within the next couple of days.
Thank you so much. Marissa, it was a pleasure meeting you. Steve, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You too, Bryson. Thank you, Steve and
Thank you
Rachel.
both.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.